Welcome, everyone. Today, I am just really excited to introduce you to our guest, Dan Burke. If you've been following my podcast, you've actually seen him before. Last year, I interviewed him on how to have an abundant life. We talked about marriage, we talked about mental prayer, we talked about how we were all in a spiritual battle. And it was a really, really insightful conversation. And so I was really thrilled to learn that he has a new book out called Finding Peace in the Storm, Reflections on St. Alphonsus Liguori's Uniformity with God's Will. And I have the book right here. And so today our whole conversation will be about this. What is God's will, or not even what is, but why is it important that we should seek and desire and love to do God's will, and how that translates to finding peace in the storm, having that constancy of faith and of peace despite what comes our way. And so, Dan, if you could just introduce yourself to our audience, and then just dive into how did you learn about St. Alphonsus treatise on uniformity, God's will, and why you decided to write this book?
Yeah, so I'm the president of the Avila Institute for Spiritual Formation. We do priestly formation. We just crossed our 500th man prepared for seminary.
Wow,
We
that's
also
amazing.
provide in-seminary formation at the Mount in Emmitsburg, spirituality year. And then we have graduate studies and personal enrichment studies for priests, religious, and laity in 90 countries. So spiritualdirection.com is kind of the most people know about that site. It's got a pretty wide readership. And then I'm also the founder of the Avila community, which is a worldwide community that seeks to repropose the contemplative life to the church, the Carmelite contemplative life that can be lived by priests and laity. We have priests who are diocesan priests who were formerly associated, and then laity and deacons, that sort of thing. So all of it is just to really bring about healing in the church through a deeper encounter with Jesus. So that's what I do all day, every day, in some form or fashion, when I'm not writing or speaking or whatever, but it all kind of comes together in all of that.
That's wonderful. And then how did you learn then about St. Alphonsus's book on uniformity with God's will? It's a mouthful.
Yeah, so my son, Jordan, my oldest son, who really went through an incredibly painful time. He wrecked his life and his marriage, and he speaks publicly about it. So I'm not revealing anything or criticizing him and saying that. That's his own. And as he was coming out of that darkness, he had a major St. Paul moment, powerful, conversion, a deeper conversion to his faith. And he came across this letter of St. Alphonsus to a religious, which it really wasn't a book, it was kind of like a pamphlet. And it really helped him through the storm that he caused, in his own life. And he kept saying, "Dad, you got to read it. You got to read it." So I did. And I was deeply moved by it. It really has become in the Apostolic VA community, we have never-ending formation for our members, and always deeper formation. And we have the themes that we've constructed to deal with both in terms of grounding in historical faith and truths about the interior life, so classical kind of teachings. And then there are themes that are there because of our time. So last time we talked about spiritual warfare and discernment of spirits. And the why I wrote that book is because we're been involved with exorcism and deliverance ministry, and know that we're in a time where the enemy is giving greater leeway and has greater force because of the accumulation of sin in society. And so that's a tool that everyone in our community learns very deeply. So then this one is another pillar of formation related to the pressures of the time, which and what's great about it is I don't have to convince anyone that things are crazy.
No.
We're in an ideological storm. We're in a sexual storm. we're in a world war, close to World War III storm. We're in a storm in the church, unprecedented, with what's going on. What's being talked about at the synod on synodality is, for most thinking Catholics, is beyond challenging. And so this book is about, we're in a big storm. And then, of course, I should say, then we have storms of the heart, right? Which are all the junk we deal with because of our own sin or somebody else's sin, So it's not hard to, to convince people that we need peace. And so I wrote this book. So I was moved by Alphonsus a little bit more. The other books we use are Searching for and Maintaining Peace by Jacques Philippe, which I mentioned, and then also Sacrament of the Present Moment by Jean-Pierre de Caussade. Both of them take different angles on the topic. Liguori, his approach is much more hard-hitting, very direct and confrontational, which is not the case in the other texts. But I thought it was a good rounding off, because we all need a gentle touch sometimes, and sometimes we need a little bit of a slap in the face. Sometimes this book's closer to that end of the spectrum, and so I thought, the church needs this, and it's the right time, and so that's what motivated me to write it.
Yeah, I can attest to what you're saying about it. It's like the way that he writes is very direct, in Alphonsus, and it's very, like you said, a slap in the face.
Yeah.
Like it's like black and white.
Yeah.
Like even something when he talks about if you're dealing with a physical ailment, for example, and like he's like, well, that's God's will. Like you need to just like accept the good, the bad, and move on. And it's like,
Right.
oh, you're right.
Yeah, can't argue. I mean, the thing about him is that even when he's tough, you can't I mean, he's one of the doctors of the church. The guy had his doctoral degrees when he was 16. He completed his doctoral work as a lawyer, I mean.
Okay.
And he had a deeper kind of conversion when he was 26, 27, because he lost a case because of he just was humiliated. He overlooked something, and he went to a home to deal with terminally ill patients. And the Lord said to him, I don't remember the exact words, but it's time to go deeper. So he became a priest then by the time he was 30. And then, of course, he founded the orders that he did. But he was brilliant. In terms of moral theology, he's on the same page as Aquinas and Augustine, not necessarily at the top of the page. He's down lower, but he's of that much gravity in terms of the church and how our own doctrine is formulated. So when he makes his arguments, he quotes scripture all over the book, and I thought, well, it was funny, or all over the letter. And I thought, I don't really want to chase all those down. I know where those are from, but which I didn't. But he had memorized so much of scripture, but his arguments are so clean that you just can't get around them, And so it sort of forces you to go, okay, I don't like this, but it's right, and I've got to deal with it, and it'll help me, So it's sort of like, and what I tried to do, I know you know this, but what I tried to do in the book was provide commentary throughout that softens it, but doesn't decrease the gravity, but helps to contextualize, take edges off that aren't necessary, or old archaic language that would be confusing. And so I think it's way more accessible than just the bold writing, and it will help, people swallow the medicine a little easier. A spoonful of sugar, so help the medicine go down.
Yes. And actually, I did enjoy your commentary throughout. And even at just starting off the book, you say, I'm just going to read it. You write, God desires that we be one with him, and that we know a state of peace and joy perpetually, regardless of circumstances. And just even that, but prior to you shared about perfection and why that's just like the foundation of St. Alphonsus's writing. Can you speak to both? Like one about perfection and why we should be actively pursuing that, not in the I want to be the best at all things way, but in the way of the spiritual life. But then also in terms of when we are unified with Christ, like how and why that leads to a state of peace.
Yeah, so Jesus said, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. And he's not a mean person saying, do something you can't possibly do. What does he mean? Well, he means in terms of our humanity, what is the highest order of, what does Valentina Imhoff look like in the highest expression of who God saw you to be before he created you, before the foundation of the world? How beautiful, how pure, how holy, how good. And that should be your goal. Why? Because that's sainthood, that's bliss, that's union with him. Because to the degree that you are like him, not in any way undoing the uniqueness of Valentina, but the fullness of Valentina in the highest perfection of what God has called you to and gifted you to achieve as well, means that you will have removed all of the things that keep you from the glory, the most powerful expressions of his love that he wants to give you, the most powerful expressions of the spirit he wants to give you, of joy, of peace, of patience. So the idea of perfection is that it's becoming all that he's asked us to be, so that nothing inhibits our union with him and all the glory that that entails and all of the good that that entails.
Mm.
And then what was the second part of the question?
You've actually touched on it a little bit, but it's how that once we are our wills, or when we reflect him more, when we are more like him, it does lead to a state of peace and joy regardless of what happens.
Yes. Yeah, because, it's sort of like my dad was a very strong man. Um, no college educations. His dad was an alcoholic. He was the dad of the house. But so he had to be really strong, and he became provider, for many, many people and helped many, many people. When I was with my dad, I felt like no one could harm me. Nothing could assail me. No obstacle couldn't be overcome, and so, and that's because I loved him and I knew he loved me, even in his flaws, and I knew he was for me. When you're in union with God, that's kind of it's a little glimmer of what it's like. So for me, I live with life-threatening lung disease. And I have my whole life, but it's actually getting worse. And there was a time in my life when I didn't trust the Lord so much, and I didn't understand how he worked through circumstance and how he was sovereign. And when I would just be so angry, I would cry because I hurt so much and because I'm so debilitated and because I could do so little in periods of my life. This year, I lost 4 months of being like where I could think really well, where I could work well, but years ago, I would rail against the circumstance, not realizing that God was in there with me.
Mm.
What I've come to learn through beautiful works like this is that he's with me, and there's a reason, and like it's what I need. It's for me, to bring me the humility that I pray for, to bring me, just, I don't want to do my will, I want to do his will. So now I'm, this year, very different than that other, because of his grace and mercy, I've been at total peace with minor blips, in the middle, not sleeping most of the time is hard.
Mm.
I woke up a little bit of a despair one morning and had to do some spiritual warfare prayers, so I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying that I live with life-threatening disease and its fluctuations and its debilitations in relative peace. I would say exceptionally strong peace, really, compared to what I used to do. And that's because the energy I used to spend being upset about what I was suffering didn't help my suffering. I talk about in the book this cocktail of I can't remember if it's my words or the paralyzing cocktail we drink. It was Alphonsus's words. When you rail against what he's trying to do in you, because through the illness he's purifying me, he's humbling me, he's showing. I'll tell you a very personal experience. Not during this last 2-month bout, but prior one. I was in my chair here in morning prayer and I couldn't breathe and I was having difficulty praying. And it was like the Lord, I have this beautiful crucifix here. It's like he came to me. He was crucified and he came to me and he pressed it's hard to talk about. He pressed his head against mine. And his breathing was labored.
Oh my.
And my breathing was labored.
Oh my goodness.
And I was able to say in that moment, I'm so sorry for your suffering, Lord. I'm sorry that my sin caused you to be crucified. And I love you and I'm great. So, but what happened was, it's like in my suffering, I got to know him. Like mine is a sliver of what he experienced, right? But nonetheless, through grace, as a finite creature, the infinite's reaching out to me saying, you can know me more now because I couldn't breathe. And that's how I died. That's actually what killed him on the cross, was asphyxiation. Funny enough, I've had this illness my whole life. I've been a Christian since I was 20. And I'm 58 and I'd never had the thought until that moment. But that's the power of suffering. If I'd been sitting in that chair whining and complaining, I wouldn't have had a disposition to receive that gift, that I could console the heart of Jesus in his suffering, that I could be consoled, that I could know him in this very unique way. So anyway, I'll never forget it, tell you that.
That's beautiful, Dan. Thank you for sharing that. And you're right that he just meets us there. And when we are receptive, that's when he's able to pour out like his grace. And I love that image. Like when we stop railing against his will, and when I just imagine like a little kid who's just like,
yes,
with his arms and legs and like,
yeah.
No.
That's a great analogy too, because I've thought about that, with people who beat themselves up or whatever. If you've had kids, when you have kids that have like a conscience, they do this thing where they do something bad and they'll smack themselves. And you want to say, dude, I love you. It's okay. I get it. You said you were sorry. Let's just learn from this and move on. And you're just doing this little narcissistic self-flagellation and you're missing the grace, So that's our humanity.
Yeah. Oh gosh. No, Dan, no, really, this is really beautiful that you shared that. And I was reminded of so my husband and I, we have a 4.5-month-old, which is kind of crazy to say. But the pregnancy was really, really challenging, was not what I expected. I just imagined when I was pregnant that it would be like how they show it in the movies where the woman is glowing and like petals were just falling at your feet and everything was just so easy. That was not the case. I was in the hospital like 3 or 4 times just for random unexplained bleeding, and I was on bed rest for a while, and I railed against it. I was just like, Lord, no. This is hard like this, and it was painful, and it was just all of these things. But now I look back and I wish I had been more receptive to what the Lord was doing, because now, like in hindsight, I see how much he brought a community around us. Like we have close friends now that we probably wouldn't have met if not through that experience. And it's easier for me now to receive others' love and help than before, when I would just be like, no, I got it, I'll do it on my own. Instead, when it's like you can't get out of bed, like people have to bring you breakfast and
Yeah.
lunch and make dinner for you. And it
Well,
was,
you learned a lot. I mean, you shouldn't be too critical of yourself. I mean,
yeah.
you learned a lot.
Yeah. So it was like it was a really beautiful experience of being able to just to see that even in a challenging circumstance, that the Lord was present and he was allowing me to experience that, like you mentioned in the book, and Saint Alphonsus says, for my good, like for my sanctification and for his glory.
Yeah.
And I would do it all over again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the lessons you learn, like you're not a passive woman, you're an active woman. You're not someone who stands by and watches the world, crumble away. You want to do something about it, so you do it. What comes with that kind of temperament is can be self-sufficiency. I don't know you well enough to know what applies. There's other words, but what he did, the gift he gave you was, let me teach you how to be vulnerable. Let me teach you some humility. Let me teach you how to be served, because you serve others, and that's how he loves us through these difficulties, right? Where we all need, like, till the day we die, we we would be great. It would be a great grace if he would constantly help us to draw near to him, which means removing things within us that hinder our nearness to him. And sometimes it's big surgery, sometimes it's minor, but yeah, you're exactly right. That's the application of this book. Now, the process of living it and learning it, the more you practice it in terms of just the discipline of looking up in the midst of the storm. I would just say simply, like, if you could summarize this whole book into 2 words, look up, right? If you want to add it to the sentence, when you're in the storm, look up. He's there. Think about your thinking, get out of the moment, what's going on, examine, pray. But that's a discipline, right? So when you first learn it, you can see in retrospect how you could have done it better. But then you head into the next thing, and I'm sure you'll have another beautiful little baby, and you'll go, okay, I know what to expect. I know this is going to hurt. I know, these are going to be difficult. I'm going to be sick. And this time I'm going to offer it up for the salvation of the very child that I'm bringing into the world this time. And then you'll have some success and some little less than you'd like. But as you learn the discipline of bringing your intellect and your will into order with God, which then allows your faculties to follow, there'll be a day when the things that used to wreck you now are the things that propel you to heaven and into the heart of God.
Hmm. Gosh, I wholeheartedly agree. And I pray that for the rest of my life, I'm constantly on that journey headed up.
Yeah.
Like, because after I read this book, honestly, it's helped reorientate my mind on suffering. Because like no, most people, I hate suffering. Like I would rather not.
Okay, just so you know, you're normal.
Yeah. But even something simple as the other day, I was trying to get our son to nap and he was struggling to fall asleep, and I was there holding him and like, shh, it's okay, you know. And then after a while, I was like, okay, God, if it's your will, like let him sleep. But if it's not, give me the grace, give me the patience, like show
Perfect.
me wisdom. And he didn't sleep, and I was like, okay, God, this is the path we're on. Like this is what you're allowing for a reason, and I don't understand.
Yeah.
But okay, like I choose this. Like okay, like
And isn't it much better than irritation?
oh yes, because I've tried that and it doesn't
Well,
help.
it gets you nothing. It just makes everything worse. And I say that as a sort of my nickname used to be Nuke, short for nuclear. I'm a very intense person. Had a real problem with anger, and then it got better, and then it was irritation, and then that's gotten better, and but man, the energy we can spend trying to change things that can't be changed and that shouldn't be changed, instead of the things that should be changed and can be changed. which are those matters of the heart related to God. And I wasted decades, but I don't self-condemn because, like where I came from, I didn't even, in spite of the goodness of my father, he was a good provider in many ways, but not a good, I never had any good nurturing on how to be a human, how to be, holy or good or whatever. And it's just that we can't be too hard on ourselves. The devil likes to give us always talk about our shame, but he's always just calling us into the moment, the present moment where he's at work, and then we can join him there. And that's the only place we can find it, is in the present moment.
Yes, no, that is very true. I remember you mentioned that in the book, which was helpful to just, again, remember that, yes, I tend to focus on the future. I'm a planner. I
Yeah.
like to be organized and but I'm like, okay, God is here and now in this present. Like I can obsess about what could happen in the future and if I'll be prepared and a lot of what ifs, but it may not happen, but what can happen right now is that I can keep my eyes on the Lord and keep my eyes on the people and the place that I'm in right now.
Yeah. I used to be my profession was strategic planning. The
Oh, okay.
first book I wrote was a secular book on business strategy, and it's funny how, the reason I was in that field was because of my childhood. I figured it out after a while, because as a child I had to figure out how not to get, I got to use proper language, but how not to get get beat up and get harmed. And so I learned to read people and to try to plan ahead and do all of that. And so it's been a great grace to be able to set that aside. Not totally. I'm still pretty forward thinking like you, but I try to make sure the devil's not drawing me out there because of fear or anxiety, especially in our time, because for forward-thinking people, the biggest temptation is worrying about all the craziness.
Yes, I can attest to that. So one thing that I would just love just some guidance on is you mentioned in the book about how we're called to unite our will to God, and so we like that's the primary thing. And but what if just we could see what God's will is, but then we're like, oh Lord, that's either going to A, cause me to suffer again because I hate suffering, but then B, I don't know if maybe I'm hearing you wrong, Lord, but how do we move past that initial fear and is God still good? Does he have my best interest in mind?
Yeah. So there's two ways to battle that situation. One is we have to develop a deep trust in Jesus, and the only way to do that is immersion in the sacraments and daily mental prayer. We have to come to know him and know that whatever suffering may come is going to yield great benefit, and it will be worth it. And he's trustworthy. He's a good father. And so that process only comes through mental prayer and the sacraments. And a lot of devout Catholics get stuck in the interior life, and Alphonsus Liguori talks about this. And often the one missing element is that mental prayer, that knowing, that deeper knowing him. One of the reasons I love The Chosen TV series, or the series, because Jonathan Rumi is so compelling as a compassionate, loving father, God, man. And I really think people need that. I think, God has gifted him and his ability to portray Jesus in this particular way for this particular time. So that has to be developed over time. Like, you can't fix that. If you don't practice mental prayer, you can't just go okay, let's read the Gospels today and I'm going to learn to trust him. It's a daily discipline over years. So that's one. The second one, I think, is breaking it down into the smallest possible next right action point, if you will. So, I, as an example, my overall health is deteriorating. I'm losing more and more time each year. And so that's, and then that means I'm closer and closer to leaving this world. So I'm entering back into reevaluation, possibly a surgery where they're going to have to go into areas that are incredibly sensitive.
Hmm.
And I honestly don't want to, but I know there have been some medical advances since the last time I went down this road. But if I sit and think about all of this too much, it will be too discouraging, because the cure, I have a great distrust, for good reason, of the modern medicine, and a great love for it, because I would be dead. I would have been dead as a young boy. So, but I've just decided I'm going to enter back in. The Lord has given me some good counselors, and I'm just every day I'm going to make whatever the appointment is. I'm going to go, I'm going to make the time, but I'm not going to think too far ahead. I'm just going to, what's the next right thing? So the next right thing is a stupid appointment I have to go to, that I have to drive 2 hours from where I live. And I'm going to go into a doctor's office where they abuse their patients and make them sit in stacks, because doctors are so much more important than patients. So we stack them up like cattle and make them sit together sick. And then when we're ready, they come and they sit at their throne, and we pay them huge amounts of money. So you see the cynical, irritated side of me coming out.
Yes.
But I'm just being honest, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I can't think like that. I have to think, praise the Lord, there's new advances. I have good advisors. I was put in touch with a specialist. I'm going to go endure all the stupidity of our current system. And maybe it'll put 10 years on my life, and my wife will be happier, and I can build, all of the work we do at the Avila Institute. I can do a better job of legacy planning and handing over the institution so that it can help the church for 100 years. And we could prepare 10,000 men for seminary. Isn't it worth enduring maybe for that, And so it's what's the next right thing, and just do that. And because you and I, however strong we are, we can't handle much in the end, but we can handle the next right thing. And that's all he really promises to give us anyway.
Yeah. Give us this day our daily bread.
Yes, you nailed it. That's the prayer.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Or sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Don't worry about tomorrow. What are you supposed to do right now? And I'll be with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, that's a good reminder. That is a good reminder. There were a couple of things that I wanted to just pull out from St. Alphonsus' text, and then we can wrap up a bit. But he really just kept hitting home the point of how we need to be united to God's will. Like nothing else matters, and that's the only way to be a saint. Like, like he's very, very clear about that. And he even used the image of, and I'm going to read this. It says, "It would be the greatest delight of the seraphs, so the angels in heaven, the highest, to pile up sand on the seashore or pull weeds in a garden for all eternity if they found out such was God's will."
Mm.
Like, I was just like, wait, what? Like, Lord, if you asked me to pile up sand and pull up weeds forever, I would have a hard time with that. I'm not gonna lie, God.
So let me like give some perspective to that. Do you remember the time in your life, a moment with a person where you felt overwhelmed with love
Mm.
and you wept?
Yeah, actually, my husband, yeah.
Yeah. So what would that feel like across eternity, and it didn't stop?
Wow, that would be incredible.
Would you care what you were doing if you had that?
No, I wouldn't.
That's it. Because when we're at one with him, it's not that it's always filled with all those lovely feelings or whatever, but the deep abiding peace, sometimes the consolations, the joy, what happens when we're in union, why it doesn't matter what we're doing, it's because we're filled with love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, self-control, hope, faith, and it's just like, everything becomes worship.
Yeah.
Like I'm painting, I'm cleaning the toilets. I mean, this is the secret of the saints. I wish I'd have put this in the book, but but everything becomes worship because your love is exploding, and it's just this constant giving of love and receiving of love from God. And that's why great saints, Therese of Lisieux, people would be shocked. She lived in a tiny little nothing of a cell, no air conditioning, some heating when it was exceptionally severe, eating vegetables every day, the discipline every Wednesday, just not a charmed life, but yet what a glorious saint, who knew how to face the storm. But it's because of these kind of secrets of how we can unite ourselves with him, when it all sort of makes sense.
And with that, Dan, can you speak to, because you end the book, and St. Alphonsus ends the book by sharing how like our highest aim should be heaven. And so like, and how he says, gosh, I wish I had pulled it apart, pulled that sentence apart, saved it, where he says, oh gosh, and I don't want to butcher it, but he's like, why would you want to continue another day on earth where you could possibly sin and that could keep you away from God?
Right. No, I mean, that's just a saying. I mean, they all say that, once they've all kind of, got up above the illuminative way, they're all like, I just, it's every little sin horrifies them. And it's just because they, what it is, like, I love my wife like crazy. I could not, it is impossible for me to conceive of a better marriage. If you said, how could you make your marriage better? I'd go, well, wish I could sleep a little better, but it's nothing about us. And so I hate it when I hurt her. I just always want to bring her joy. And I hate those moments when I'm not in that right mode and I'm a little too short, or I'm a little, and that comes from a deep oneness between she and I. And that's really what Alphonsus is echoing, happens between us and God as we draw near.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, Dan, this has been so enjoyable to speak with you. Thank you for your vulnerability, and also for your encouragement. Like, just listening to you and you encouraging me is just, it keeps me going. So thank you. And I just want to encourage everyone to pick up this book. You can get it at sophiainstitute.com, and I put a link to it in the show notes. But it's, again, Finding Peace in the Storm, Reflections on St. Alphonsus Liguori's Uniformity with God's Will. And it is worth your read. It's quick. There's a lot there to unpack, but Dan does a really good job of breaking it down and softening a little of St. Alphonsus' words. But yes, but Dan, thank you again for coming back, and it's so good to see you. And
good to see you too.
Yeah, we'll be praying for you and your health. So
thank you.
And thank you all again for listening. And remember, when you say yes to God, you change the world. God bless you, and see you next time.